This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 27th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. Today we have the details on the just announced all-new Maserati GranTurismo, and it is one hot car, sizzling. It comes with not one, but instead two very innovative powertrains, and we'll tell you all about it. I'll tell you they're excited in Maserati about it. Auto sales are finally up as the car industry begins to solve its parts supply issues, but the rising tide didn't lift all boats. And we'll tell you which car companies made gains and which ones are still struggling in the water there. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and drivingtoday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury. So imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. And don't spell out hyphen, just stick a hyphen in there. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is guest host Matt DeLorenzo. He's smiling and happy to be with us, I think. Matt has been a frequent guest on the show, and he has a new book called How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a Tightwads Guide to EV Ownership. Great to have him on the show this week. Thanks for being with us, Matt. We're so glad to have you.
It's always great to be here, Jack.
Matt is such a knowledgeable guy. He will also be our special guest for this week. Look at that, serving two roles on the show. He's a fellow North American Car of the Year juror, expert on electric cars, and expert on all cars in the car industry for that matter. Reported at Road and Track and Automotive News, Auto Week, among others. And of course, we'll discuss his new book with him. In addition to electric cars, there's a lot of rosy predictions about electric cars we can talk about, Matt. Are you ready for all that? You ready to talk about all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. Yep. It's a brave new world out there. There's a lot to talk about. So, yeah, we'll cover some ground.
Yes, we will. And it is a brave new world, and we'll see how brave it really turns out to be. In the road test segment, I will not only be road testing one of our favorite crossover SUVs, the Mazda CX-9, also give you the details on a road trip my wife Sandy and I and another couple took in the vehicle. We went to what some might call an unlikely place or two. So we'll tell you about that coming up. That's all going to be available for you. Hear about the Nerad's road trip. It is America on the Road after all. But before we do anything else, we'll be bringing you some of the most important automotive information from around the world. So stay with us. With Matt DeLorenzo, this is Jack Nerad with you. We're so glad you're with us right here on America on the Road. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with guest host Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad back with you. Chris Teague couldn't be with us today, but we have Matt subbing for him, as he always does a marvelous job. Really auto expert personified. That's Matt DeLorenzo. And news time. The hottest piece of news, I think, is this new Maserati GranTurismo that's just introduced. I got some, over the wire before the general public got information about this, but the GranTurismo looking pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, you've probably seen pictures of this too, Matt. It strikes me as a little bit of old school in this design. It's not really reach out, but I really like it. I mean, what's your take?
Yeah, it's an evolutionary design. You know, the previous GranTurismo has been around for about, 10 or 12 years. So, and they had this kind of radical looking Alfieri kind of sports car. They took the middle path and just did an evolutionary change on this car. And it's sexy, it's Italian. It's really nice to see that they're staying in the game, both with, the two powertrains you were mentioning.
Yeah, the powertrains are an internal combustion engine, very powerful, and then a battery electric powertrain that's really interesting. So I like both of these, but I like what they've done with the looks. It's going to be built 100% in Italy. They're quite proud of that. I mean, everything that's in this thing, I think even to the sound system comes from Italy. So if you like things Italian, and certainly Italian design is gorgeous, and I love the country of Italy too. I love the food. I love the people. I love everything about it. I love going there. I'd love to go there again. But this is really cool stuff, isn't it? The V6 engine. 490 horsepower twin turbo in basic 3-liter form, and then the high performance Trofeo version, same engine, goes to 550 horsepower. That's a lot of juice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, they take advantage of their partnership. They're all kind of under the Stellantis umbrella. And that V6 engine comes from down the road at Ferrari. So it has a marvelous, Italian sound to it. I'm just really happy that there are cars like this that reflect their country of origin and have certain design cues that are exciting. I think we have had enough of androgynous cars that could be from anywhere.
Yeah, and we have that all the time, and certainly the design community, right? I mean, Americans are in Japan designing Korean car. It's all crazy. Or they're in America, and we have Europeans designing Korean cars here in America. It's kind of nuts. So I'm 100% with you. It's kind of cool that this national origin of Italy just kind of permeates the Gran Turismo, and I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, it's what makes the cars so interesting. And Maserati's been fairly successful down here in Orange County. You see a lot of them. You go outside other parts of the country, they're really rare birds. But places like Newport Beach, they've really embraced the mark.
Yeah, and I have seen some even in the town in which I live, which is kind of gentrified since I moved in here. I bring the average income way down in this town, but there's a lot of people with Maseratis here, so I'm excited about this battery electric powertrain. It's called the Folgore system, or Folgore, I think probably Folgore, right? You've got Italian in your background, certainly, Matt. 800 volt technology, 3 permanent magnet motors that give up to 760 horsepower at the wheels. I mean, this should be a rocket ship.
Yeah, it will be. The interesting thing, one of the great things about Maseratis is the sound signature. And Dodge just showed this concept car, electric Charger, and it has sort of this fake V8 engine Hemi sound. So
Right.
I'm really interested to see what Maserati does in terms of what sort of sound signature they give this electric vehicle, and whether or not people will accept it. Whether that's the real thing, or this is obviously fake.
Yeah.
and we'll want the the V6 powered version instead.
Yeah, I don't know. I have never been one of these sound guys or the engines. I think that was something that some car writer 2 generations before us just decided to throw in, and it's become a thing to the point where we write about it, then they tune exhaust to sound like something, and then now they're piping in sounds. You can make it sound like anything you want, and I just think that's kind of bogus myself. Yep. If an electric car is soundless, or the electric car sounds like an electric car, well, so be it. That's what's going on. One of the things I think is interesting about this vehicle, or this application, is how they place the batteries, because they place them kind of around where the seats go, so they can keep the seats down low, and you're not sitting atop the batteries. In a lot of vehicles, and certainly crossovers that are electrics, you sit on top of the batteries. The GM Ultium platform, you typically sit on top of the battery. So I think that's a cool thing, and to make this a much sportier vehicle. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think they want to keep the center of gravity low. They want to keep the seating position where it is, to where you're not, it's not an SUV. It's a very sexy 2-door coupe. So I like you, I applaud them for trying to adapt the electric technology around what the vehicle is, as opposed to trying to remake the vehicle because they have some sort of skateboard underneath it.
Yeah, I think that's cool, and it makes it look better, I think, too. They've done all the electronics too in Italy. They're proud of this vehicle domain control module that provides, it's kind of the central brains of the vehicle. And then they have an intelligent assistant multimedia system that they've also designed. I'm really curious as to what an Italian designed infotainment system will be like, right? I mean, how do you feel about that?
I don't know. Maybe it'll only work part of the time.
We'll take a siesta here and there.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
have a big late lunch and they decide, well, I'm going to nap for a while.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. Sonos 3D sound system, also Italian, can have up to 19 speakers. I don't know where you stuff 19 speakers in this fairly small coupe, but it's pretty cool. The basic sound system is 14 speakers, 860 watts of output. So, almost 1,200 watts of output. So all in all, I'm really excited about this new Maserati. I think Maserati is due for, if not a comeback, at least more visibility in the United States, and we'll see what happens with them. And I'm always happy to see a brand doing well that is a little bit different. So full electric version or gasoline version, your choice. I think that's a good thing, and see what happens with that. Well, we promised some talk about auto sales, and largely they were up in September for many brands. General Motors was up 24%. Chevrolet was up 30%. GMC up 24%. Cadillac up 50%. This is over September of 2021, which was a way down month. How do you feel auto sales are going to do either now and through the end of the year, Matt?
I think generally they will be trending upward because cars are getting old. People haven't been replacing them. We went kind of through a trough. I don't think they're going to be as robust, though, as we've seen in the past, where we've had 17 million car years. And I think the reason is inflation is taking a bigger bite. I think the fuel costs. I think there's a lot of people who would like to be in the market. They're going to wait and see what happens. And I think it'll be really interesting in the first quarter of next year to see if we see incentives making some sort of a comeback, because now that some manufacturers have their capacity back and where they're slowly overcoming the chip problems, we could end up into a situation where there'll be the manufacturer actually pushing their product into the market as opposed to selling everything they can over sticker price.
Yeah, I think another factor there, of course, is rising interest rates. So we're seeing much higher interest rates, and that's going to clobber auto sales. We told you we'd tell you about the marks that were up, the brands that are up. Toyota was up. Lexus division, though, down. Stellantis was down. FCA was down. That's Jeep, Dodge, et cetera, et cetera. Hyundai had a nice gain. Honda, sad. I mean,
yeah,
pretty sad in the face of what its rival did. Toyota was up 17%. Honda was down 17%. 35% decline for the third quarter. I mean, they're not solving this problem as quickly as some others, are they?
No, and I think part of it maybe the ability to supply the market, but also their product range is somewhat limited. I mean, I think Toyota had some interesting new entries into the market, like the Corolla Cross, which is a small crossover, and it competes with the HR-V. They're finding some surprising life in sedans. And I think their hybrid offerings help them a lot in terms of fuel economy. And so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Honda's got some new product coming up, new Pilot coming in, some new CR-V just hitting the market. So I think they will regain some momentum. It's just going to take some time for them to ramp back up to where they were.
Yeah, I mean, difficult for them. Nissan not doing so great either. So some of the major Japanese brands are suffering. The Korean brands, Kia and Hyundai, going great guns. Well positioned. Well, when we come back, we will be taking a look at the Mazda CX-9 Signature in our road test segment. And we'll look at that. And we'll also look at a little road trip we took in it. So stay with us for that. With Matt DeLorenzo, this is Jack Nerad back with you. And this is Jack Nerad with you. And come back with us in just a minute, right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with guest host Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you. Thanks so much for being with us. It's road test time and road trip time on America on the Road this week. Not only was I road testing the Mazda CX-9, one of our favorite crossovers. But I also did a road trip in it with my lovely wife, Sandy, another couple, friends here in Manhattan Beach, California, came along with us. And so I'll tell you about the trip in addition to telling you about the vehicle. But first, let me road test the vehicle before I tell you about where we went in it. Where we went in it was kind of interesting, though. It's a 3-row crossover. It has many of the features that kind of set Mazda apart, I think. I mean, more premium. It's a mass market brand, certainly, but I think its vehicles, and CX-9 in particular, are more premium than a lot of those vehicles. And I think they've enhanced that for 2023. They've made a lot of stuff standard. Touring edition is standard, and it's full of stuff, as I'll outline. It has standard I-active all-wheel drive. So all-wheel drive on every car. You don't get a front driver. And driving dynamics. I mean, this is probably the most fun to drive of all the midsize crossovers, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, they've done a terrific job in doing the responsive handling that you expect from, all their products. And I believe, did you drive the Carbon edition?
Actually, I was driving the Signature edition, the top one. So
yeah, and they have some interesting. They've done some interesting packaging with them. When you get the top level ones, they really have everything you would want. But they brought out this sort of mid-price range Carbon edition that has like black wheels and kind of a sporty, more appearance package. But the thing about the CX-9 is it comes across more as kind of like a mid-sized station wagon rather than an SUV, because it's sleek, it's really sexy looking. The third row is a little tight, but it's like you said, it's certainly a lot of fun to drive and very easy to wheel about because of its tidier dimensions.
Yeah. Well, let me walk you through the various levels here, because you kind of walked us into that to begin with, so it makes a lot of sense to talk about them. For 2023, the base model is the touring model. It has seating for 6 with the second row captain's chairs, a pass-through to the third row. Leather seating, power moonroof, LED fog lights, and wireless phone charger are among the standard features here, so this is really well equipped. It has the Skyactiv G 2.5 turbo engine. In fact, all of them do. 6-speed automatic, and I'll talk about that a little bit when I talk about the driving experience. 250 horsepower. And 320 pound-feet of torque on premium. And Mazda calls out the fact that you don't get as much horsepower when you run regular, but you can, 227 horsepower. And I like the fact they do that. I think that happens in a lot of vehicles out there. It's just not transparent or not revealed to the buyer, right?
Yeah, you have to make a conscious choice. You're going to spend, you want that extra power, you're going to spend extra money for higher price gas. But most cars will run on regular, but like the Germans, they'll recommend, premium on their high performance engines.
Right. The engine senses the octane of the vehicle, or senses knock basically, and keeps the vehicle from knocking. And octane is really to fight knock, pre-ignition. So all-wheel drive system is standard. It monitors what the vehicle is doing and shifts power automatically, so you don't have to do any special things. And then it also has G-Vectoring Control Plus and Off-Road Traction Assist as standard. Ton of driver assist features are also standard in their iActive Sense driver assist, including adaptive cruise control with stop and go. Some stuff that's, if you were to buy a premium brand car, a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW, you'd be paying for a package in addition to the higher base price to get this stuff. It's really got a ton of stuff. And I like that. I mean, what's your take on the overall?
Well, I think that's a conscious decision on Mazda kind of to position themselves as a premium mass market make. And, and that's reflected in the design, because it's a beautiful vehicle and you look at it and you go, they really use nice materials and high quality soft touch things inside. And you get all this equipment baked into the base price. Now the base price might be high, you might be able to find a cheaper vehicle out there, but you're not going to find one as nice for the money.
For the money, yeah, agreed. It has a 2.25, a 10.25 full color center display. Has the Mazda Connect infotainment system that takes a little bit of getting used to because you have to use a controller. It's not a touch screen. I think that's good once you catch on to it, and we caught on to it pretty quickly during our road trip. This is good. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are integrated, so all that's to the good. Here's some other standard features. This is I'm talking about the base car here. I'm not talking about the signature version that's up level that we drove. This is heated front seats, push button start, power lift gate, keyless entry, leather wrapped shifter and steering wheel, Bluetooth, 6-speaker sound system, 3-zone automatic climate control. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface. There's a ton of stuff. There's a Touring Plus edition that adds some stuff to that, including 20-inch alloy aluminum alloy wheels. And then the Carbon edition you talked about, that has heated second row captain's chairs. They have one of these blackout treatment vehicles that we're seeing. I'm wondering how that's going to age, though, Matt. I mean, it's cool now. Will it be cool in 5 years' time?
You know, we've seen this before. Remember in the early 90s, they were doing the Euro blackout. I was just thinking about that. You know, they do the black moldings and body colored bumpers and the monochromatic look. I think it's of the moment, but I agree with you. I think it's one of those things 5 years from now we're going, yeah, that's not that great.
Yeah.
But those vehicles stand out on the road.
I love these red leather seats. My wife detests them. You know, she just doesn't want to go there. There is a Gran Touring edition that adds even more stuff. You can have either second row bench seats or captain's chairs. It has the 360 view monitor, so it helps you park. Mazda navigation is included. Traffic sign recognition is included, so that's good. And now we're finally getting to the vehicle that we drove on the road trip, which was super spectacular. Just the perfect vehicle, it turned out, for this road trip. It is the Signature Edition. It has heated second row captain's chairs. So our other couple who occupied those didn't feel like second-class citizens. They had, great seats to sit in. Armrest storage, like in the first row. So everything was good for them that way. Napa leather in the first and second row seats, not just reserved for the first row people. And I think ours was in parchment color. The other color is deep chestnut, not just chestnut, but deep chestnut. And they have quilting and all that stuff. I mean, it looks really elegant. I mean, you look in that interior and go, this is a luxury car interior, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what you get, again, in a mass market car. You'd be hard pressed to, if you changed the badges on it, if there was like a 3-pointed star on it, you'd say, oh yeah, it's a Mercedes. I mean, it's quite remarkable, the level of luxury that you can get in a mainstream vehicle.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about the driving experience and the road trip we took, because it was fun. First, we flew into Kansas City, Missouri. Now, go figure. I mean, that's not probably your first choice or maybe your 30th choice of a place to go on vacation for a couple of days. But we decided to base in Kansas City. Flew in a really interesting city, as it turns out, with really interesting history. We toured it in the CX-9 and saw a bunch of the sites. There is a Federal Reserve there. There's a money museum there. They even give you samples, but they're all ripped up. A bunch of cool stuff to do in Kansas City. I was surprised at how much I liked the city. We went there to see a baseball game. One of the other male of the two males on the trip is a Kansas City Royals fan, inexplicably. So he wanted to, and he doesn't come from Kansas City. This was his first visit to Kansas City. He liked some Royals players and knew some Royals folks, so became a Kansas City Royals fan, and we saw a game there at Kauffman Stadium. Had a great time. The Kansas City people are so welcoming, and just the ballpark was great. Kansas City happened to win that night, so that was good. They were on a 3-game winning streak, which is unusual for them this season. So that was a blast. We had a good time there. And then we toured Kansas City the next day in the CX-9, just drove around and found it, just perfect to drive around in the city. Have you ever spent much time in Kansas City, Matt?
Never been there. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, well, maybe even more so now. There's some more interesting stuff than you would imagine. And its history during Prohibition was wild. I mean, it was a wide open town. And so just that history alone is pretty interesting, and what went on there and what didn't go on. And, Prohibition wasn't really happening in that city, apparently. So that's kind of cool to see. And then we drove to Columbia, Missouri. And you might wonder why we drove to Columbia, Missouri. That is the home of the University of Missouri. And it turns out there was a country concert there with Thomas Rhett, who I consider to be the world's greatest country singer of all time. My wife just loves him too, and the other couple wanted to see them. So we drove. It was about a 120-mile drive, mostly on interstate. CX-9 was perfect for that, and got there in no time, using the navigation, doing all the things, worked really, really well. Got there in time for the concert. Actually, we got there in time to have some steak at a steakhouse. You can't be in that neck of the woods without getting a good steak, so we did that. And then off we went to the concert, which was on the campus of the University of Missouri in their field house. Spectacular concert. Loved the opening acts in addition to Thomas Rhett, so that was all good. Just turned into a great trip. And then, after the concert was over, around 11 o'clock, we drove the 2 hours plus back to Kansas City. And, that kind of was our trip. Then we were off on the airplane. So kind of a quick turnaround, 2 days in Kansas City and then into Columbia, Missouri. But this was a spectacular vehicle for that trip, and a fun trip, too.
Those are really, I think that's one of the great things, even 3-row SUVs, is that you can travel around with another couple in great comfort. And, I like riding in the second row of SUVs and even minivans. I mean, I like to sleep when I'm in a car.
Which is not so good when you're driving, but at other times.
But in the second row, you're not going to get much conversation out of me.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you get way too much out of me. So I think it would be a nice, happy medium there. So very, very good. So that was our summation of the CX-9 trip to Kansas City, to Columbia, Missouri. Had a great time with those people. I mean, I should mention the food that we had, too. The barbecue in Kansas City was absolutely terrific. We actually ventured into Kansas City, Kansas for our barbecue at a place called Joe's, which I highly recommend. Awesome stuff. But that kind of sums up our trip. We had a great time. So thanks for helping me relive it a little bit, Matt.
Sounds like great fun. Now I got to redouble my efforts to get to Kansas City.
Get to Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, we will have a special guest, and you're looking at him. His name is Matt DeLorenzo, and he will be back with us, and we'll talk about his book on buying an EV affordably and some things going on in the auto industry. So stay with us for that. Again, with Matt DeLorenzo. You won't be asking yourself questions, but I will be asking you questions in the next segment. This is Jack D. Red saying, stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to America on the Road with Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you, and Matt DeLorenzo is our guest in this segment. He is our special guest. And Matt, you've got a new book out. I think very apropos the times. I mean, we're looking at $7 a gallon gas here in California, as you well know. It's kind of crazy out here. I mean, high sixes, I think right now is the average. I've seen more than $7 in a lot of places. But let us know about your book.
Well, it's called How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, and it's subtitled The Tightwads Guide to EV Ownership. And the reason I wrote the book is I needed a car earlier this year, and we had a plug-in hybrid, and I thought, I should look at electric. And I first toyed with the idea of getting a used electric car because I'm kind of a tightwad. I don't, spend a lot on my own cars. And then I discovered that I could get a Nissan Leaf for about what, with all the tax incentives and all that, for about what I would be spending for a used electric. So I bought a new one. And then I based a lot of my experiences in buying the Leaf and owning the Leaf to kind of let the average Joe or Janet know what it's like to own an electric car, because it's not like owning a gas car. A lot is dependent on how far the car can go with range, whether or not you have access to home charging, what kind of home charging you're going to be using. Do you want to go to the expense of putting in a really fancy level 2 charger, or can you get by, as in my case, with just having a 240 dryer outlet that I plug my car into? So, went through what are the advantages in terms of less maintenance and public charging. That's one of the things that a lot of people are concerned about, because they come to a charger and it's not working. So what do you do then? So there's a lot of ins and outs to owning an electric vehicle. It's just not like replacing your gas car. And there are some affordable alternatives out there under $50,000, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I want to talk to you about, because the average transaction price for an electric vehicle right now is $67,000, something
Correct.
like that. I mean, that's hardly affordable, right? But what you point out in your book, and it's so important, is there are some that are affordable, including the Nissan Leaf, also the Chevy Bolt EV and
Right.
EUV. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, under $40,000, there's probably about 6 or 7 vehicles right now. There used to be the Ioniq electric, which was
the Hyundai Ioniq electric.
Right, but then they replaced that with the much more expensive Ioniq 5. And that vehicle is kind of shuffled off the stage. But there's things like a Mini Cooper, and there's the Kia Niro, the Hyundai Kona, and like you mentioned, the Bolt and the Leaf. But the problem is that it's getting the new ones that are coming out. I liken it to kind of like back in the 50s, when cars were big and expensive and flashy, and all the electrics that are coming out, like the Hummers and the Rivians and the Lucids. They're all high-end, really expensive cars, and so if we're going to get to the point where people say we're going to get off fossil fuels, you need a lot more affordable EVs that are out there. And I just I wanted to alert people to that there are some options, but there's a price to be paid, and that price is you're not going to have the range of a gas car. If you live in a really cold environment, you're not going to want one with less than 300-mile range, because when in winter, you're just not going to go as far, especially if you're using the heater and those types of things. So I think what I'm trying to do is align people's expectations with what's out there in the marketplace, and then you can make the decision whether or not an EV is right for you or not. And surprisingly, for a lot of people, it makes sense as a second vehicle, as an everyday commuter to work. If you don't have a monster 100-mile each way commute.
Well, you live with one every day, so you've not only written the book, but you've lived the book quite literally. Mm-hmm. You bought the car, you live with it every day. What are some of the things you found that maybe you didn't expect, or?
I think the driving experience really is a lot different because of the regenerative braking and range. It plays such a big role in the vehicle. You can actually one pedal drive. I have a one pedal drive mode, which I don't use typically, but you can basically, once you let off the accelerator, your brake lights come on and you will come down to a complete stop. And you have to, gauge where you are, and you may have to use your brake a little bit.
Is there any reason you don't use it?
I just find I like using a brake. I mean, I feel like when I get off the gas, I should be on the brake. That's just the way I learned to drive. I'm much more comfortable. I feel much more engaged than letting the car pick the braking speed for me. It's just one of those things. And it varies from car to car. So that's one of the things that if you're going to be in the market for an electric car, you really can't, do I'm going to buy it online and have them drop it off at my house. You really got to get out, drive it, figure out how the controls work. They do vary from vehicle to vehicle. The braking is different. The regen braking is different. And the most important thing is figuring out exactly how much range, not that you want, but what you need versus your budget.
Yeah, and usable range too. I mean, talk
Correct.
about that too, because whenever I'm driving in, especially in an EV with fairly limited range, and the Leaf, I don't know what the range of your Leaf is. Is it 140 or something like that?
Yeah, 150 miles basically. Yeah.
So how much do you consider usable? When do you start getting nervous about, oh, I've got to go home and plug this in, or I've got to plug this in somewhere?
I've run it down to like 3 or 4 miles it's showing on the thing. Yeah, but I typically don't. Once I get under about 20%, then I'm looking to plug it in. But I don't plug it in every day either. I may, right now, I think I got about 40% in there. And if I have a couple of errands to run, I won't plug it in until I know that the next day I'm going to need the vehicle. So, and the other thing is, they don't recommend you charging it up to 100% all the time either. I liken charging a battery like blowing up a balloon. Is like, how when you first are starting to blow the balloon up, it's very difficult, then it gets easy, then when you get near the full, it gets hard again. Same thing with the battery. If you deplete the battery too low, when you start to initiate the charge under 20%, it takes a lot more energy to get the current flowing into the battery. And on the other end, when you get above 80%, it's like trying to jam that electricity in. All that is generating heat. And that's the one thing that affects battery life and also can pose a fire risk. I mean, that's the thing with the bolt fires. They're saying don't charge a bolt above 90%. Don't let it fall below 20%. So the batteries are happiest working between 20 to 80% of range, and that's what you should consider your usable, really, bandwidth when you come with a vehicle. So I'm looking at 150-mile range. I typically will drive my car anywhere from 90 to 120 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the reality. Right. Right. But I've used fast charging too, and that works out pretty well. I've had a trip like to downtown LA, which, the round trip for me was about 140 miles. I drove 70 miles up there. I plugged in, had lunch. It took about 45, 50 minutes to get about 95% charge. Did whatever business meeting, and I made it back home and plugged my car in again. So you can get around it.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that you don't plug it in every night. I kind of get that. And, a lot of electric vehicle proponents are saying, well, you just plug it in every night. It's like putting your watch on the charger. But it's not quite like putting your watch or your phone on the charger, right? I mean, There's a lot more to it than that in terms of cords and this and that. Sure, you don't have to go to the big gas station, but in some ways, you're kind of hooking up a gas hose to the thing every night if you're doing that, or whenever you do.
Right. Yeah. And you don't go to the gas station every day. So I think that that's the other thing that you have to learn is that you only charge when it's necessary. But you got to make sure that you remember to do that. Because if you get up in the morning and you only have about 30, 40 miles of range and you got to go 50 miles a day, then you're going to have some issues.
Yeah. So. You're in a world of hurt because, and as I mentioned, you can't get a can of electricity at the corner gas station either. So
no, although there are some of these, there's this company, I think it's Charge Away. So there are some people who are seeing some, some opportunity in doing mobile charging to get to you when you're out. But it's still going to take time. I mean, a can of gas you pour in 5 minutes and you're on your way. Even if the guy comes to charge your car up by the side of the road, you're going to be stuck there for half an hour, 40 minutes just to get any usable range out of it. And that's the other thing too, is that the bigger the battery, the longer it takes to recharge, the more expensive the battery is, and the more expensive your electricity costs will be. And, Tesla just raised the price of their supercharging to 50 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's not if gas ever gets back down to $2 or $3 a gallon, and electricity keeps going up, there's going to be a spot where they're almost at parity. So it won't make any difference whether you're putting gas in your car or electricity.
Yeah, yeah. What is your advice for somebody who is looking to buy an affordable EV? And then I want to see the cover of your book.
Buy my book. Buy my book. No,
right.
I think the greatest thing right now, if you're in market, is the internet. And that's the first place you should go. You should do a lot of homework online. Look at the electric vehicles that are out there. The incentives are an absolute mess after the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act. It literally pulled the rug out from under three of the most affordable electric vehicles out there. The Mini Cooper, the Niro, and the Kona no longer are eligible.
Yeah,
and
the Kia
even
Niro. I was
expensive.
just on the event for the new Kia Niro EV, and they haven't priced it because they don't know how to price it based on the Inflation Act change.
Exactly, because they're not built here in the U.S. Now it's helped Nissan because the Leaf is built in Tennessee, and they were getting near the 200,000 sales unit threshold where that tax credit was going to begin to phase out, but they're okay for now. But then next year, battery content requirements begin to phase into where 40% of the battery content has to come from either the US or a US free trade partner, which is Canada or Mexico, or it doesn't qualify for it. And there are vehicle price caps of $55,000 on cars and $85,000 on SUVs and pickup trucks. And there can be an argument to be made that the old incentives, you gas, I'm paying for your electric car, that kind of thing. But the idea behind it was good, was trying to erase the cost premium of electric cars from gas cars and get people into EVs. This new bill is meant to it's become a political
It's rewarding
football.
American companies and union workers, and
Correct.
It's nothing other than
it's not going to do
item.
anything to get people into electric cars,
right.
and that's a shame. If that's the policy, then the policy should be to encourage everybody to help them get access to EVs, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well,
and
I wonder about any kind of incentive and, jump starting an industry for 10, 12 years. And if you pull the incentives out, then the sales tumble back down. I mean, I'm just not a believer in those kind of incentives. So I think maybe you and I disagree a little bit on that. But again, the name of your book is How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a Tightwads Guide to EV Ownership. Matt DeLorenzo is the author of this book. Look for it on Amazon. It's a terrific book. He says go to the internet, but this is really the first place you should go. Go to buy this book from Matt and, learn from the guy who's actually doing it, what's going on with EVs. Really important stuff. Before we end this segment, I just want to ask you one quick question. There was a battery expo recently, and a lot of brave talk about market share for battery electric vehicles, both overseas and in the United States, to the tune of perhaps as much as 50% market share by 2030. What's your take on market share for electric vehicles in the next, by the end of the decade?
I'm not that optimistic, and I think the reason is while the manufacturers are behind EVs and the government's behind EVs, the public still needs to be convinced, and the big thing is cost. And as there were a lot of bold predictions about the cost curve bending down on batteries. Well, guess what? Yeah, we're getting economies of scale from building more batteries, but it's also put a tremendous pressure on the raw materials like lithium that go into the batteries. So now the cost curve isn't bending down like everybody expected it would. And I think we're going to continue to see EVs cost more than comparable gas-powered vehicles. And as long as that disparity exists in the marketplace and people are permitted to buy internal combustion engine vehicles, gas cars are going to win every time. So I think if we get to 25 to 30% EV penetration by 2030, that's a big victory for EVs.
Yeah,
50%,
I don't think,
I
I
don't see it
frankly don't think we're
happening.
going to get there. I
Yeah.
don't think we're going to get there. And having spoken to some market analysts about the raw materials issues and to people within car companies who will privately say, I don't know how with these kind of premiums we can sell that number of vehicles. I just don't know that we're going to go there.
Yeah.
But when we come back with Matt DeLorenzo, we will have a listener question. So stay with us for that. With Matt DeLorenzo, this is Jack Nerad with you. Look for Matt's book and stay with us for the next segment right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with guest host Matt DeLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you, and it is listener question time. We love listener questions, and I think this is a good listener question. It's going to take us off the EV thing for a while. This is from Tony in Passaic, New Jersey. He says, I'm looking for a full-size SUV, something like a Chevy Tahoe. What do you think are some of the better ones? Matt?
The Chevy Tahoe.
It's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had a Chevy Tahoe for 22 years. The same one.
And they've done a good job. The Ford Expedition is great. Ford was the first one to put an independent rear in a full-size SUV. And I like some of the Korean, the Palisade and the Telluride. Now they're ostensibly mid-size, but they're almost full-size. And the same goes for the Chevy Traverse. It's literally a full-size SUV on a mid-size platform. So there are some good choices out there.
Yeah, one you didn't mention is one I've been driving recently, and that's the Jeep Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer. Yes. I think those are really good vehicles. I mean, those are new entries in that space.
They are.
There's a Ford Expedition out front of my house right now that I like very much too, but I really like the Wagoneer. Now there's going to be a long wheelbase version of the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer that are essentially competitors for the Chevy Suburban, which is another vehicle not mentioned, but certainly an excellent vehicle in that class. So there are a lot of great choices, and these vehicles ride like limousines. They're luxuriously appointed. This is a really cool class of vehicles. I think, as you mentioned, this is the way American family cars have gone.
Right. And you look at those Jeeps too. The interiors on them are spectacular, and they're spendy. I mean, they're not going to be a cheap vehicle, but I got into one of, I think, a Grand Wagoneer, and I thought this would give a Lincoln Navigator, a luxury vehicle, a run for the money. So
yeah,
it's simply, it shows what the U.S. industry does best. I don't think anybody for the money can match a U.S. built domestic full-size SUV when it comes for luxury and price.
No, I mean, they haven't come close. And the Grand Wagoneer competes with the Escalade, it competes with the Navigator, and the Wagoneer is more a Chevy GMC competitor, Ford Expedition competitor.
Right.
And I think those are good choices out there. And like you say, I drove a Wagoneer recently, and boy, I loved it. And I think that's the hot tip. That's much more affordable than the Grand Wagoneer, and still is very luxuriously equipped.
Yep. Another one that we didn't mention is the Toyota Sequoia, which is based off their Tundra pickup truck, and it's interesting because they're just a little bit smaller than the domestics. They're not quite the same size, the same footprint.
Right.
But certainly from a durability and fuel economy and that sort of point of view, the Sequoia is worth a look as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All new after about 12 years, they have an all new one in the marketplace based on that new Tundra pickup truck. So very, very good. Well, thanks so much for being with us, Matt. We really do appreciate it. People should look for your book about how to buy an affordable EV. Look for it on Amazon. Matt DeLorenzo is the author. And thanks so much to all of you for listening to America on the Road. We really do appreciate it. Join us again next week for another edition of America on the Road.